Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This session is on the 4 key roles of enterprise architecture and delivered by Axel. Before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about Vital Learning Edge. We are a trusted provider of certification training. We deliver top-tier training to help you get ahead in a competitive landscape, and we draw on expertise from our parent company, Vital Advisory, as an example of people that we work with. All of our trainers and our cohort have over 25 years of experience in training. We only work with real-world practitioners. We don't hire trainers full-time. We only offer best value and top quality, and we offer extremely good customer service and satisfaction, if I don't say so myself. Here's a little bit of our portfolio at a glance. We offer the full Asaka portfolio, as well as IC2, Cloud Security Alliance, AI certs, and from People Cert, we offer Prince2 Idle DevOps, as well as some ISO standards. And from this session today, we also offer TOGAF training officially accredited through the Open Group. So over to Axel.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you guys at VLE, and big hi, big up for my Jess. As always, you know, she knows how much I love sharing my passion for architecture. So today, guys, there's a different viewpoint. And if you know me already and you've been on my website, I'll give you the QR code down the track if you want to do so. There's a blog where I share my thoughts on architecture and how I try to correlate enterprise architecture with a lot of other things, basically, because it's such an amazing thing that architecture is a way of thinking, right? Today, I want to talk about the 4 key roles of enterprise architecture where it has the highest impact in my view. So without much further ado, the value of enterprise architecture is what I focus on the most during the class. When you do class with us at VLE on TOGAF, you will see that I go beyond the basic core exam preparedness. I try to give you something else, the edge, what I like to call the unfair advantage for your career, right? Is that you will not just prepare well for the exam, but you also have a very deep real-world understanding of architecture, how you can apply it in basically every day in your life, and not just work, but privately as well. You know, you can use this kind of thinking to do work at home, etc. So I want to break down the value of enterprise architecture through 4 lenses. First one will be architecture as design. The second is architecture as decision support. Then we'll talk about architecture as a framework, and finally, architecture as knowledge management. So let's look at this one. Here, the section architecture as design is meant to focus or shift the focus to the what I call the conceptual side of enterprise architecture practice. It's called architecture as a design discipline because that's what we do basically. It's the bridge between say the high-level corporate strategy and successful IT execution. And this is notoriously fragile. And generally, I don't even mention IT or ICT as a word anymore. I just say automation, right? Automation. We have a lot of buzzwords, as you know, at the moment. We got agile, we got cloud, we got AI, etc. Well, architecture in a digital world is about automating human processes. So the strength, I think, of any design relies in the integrity of the architecture blueprint. Here, we highlight 3 critical functions of our design framework. First, there will be the strategic alignment that establishes a direct line from corporate objective to IT deployment. Okay, this automation I was talking to you about. The second is capability modeling that maps the functional boundaries of our organization, outlining exactly how departments, data, and systems interact to deliver customer value. Thirdly, the complexity control, which is our weapon against, say, platform sprawl, for example, shadow IT, technical debt crawling, etc. It allows us to identify the redundant software, hardware, systems, features, and simplify our integration landscape. the cleaning factor. Ultimately, those blueprints will serve as our single source of truth, guiding cross-functional teams through the complex digital transformation with zero ambiguity. You see, without a deliberate, structured architecture design, strategic visions often dissolve into fragmented, uncoordinated hardware, software system deployment. And by designing a unified enterprise set of models, we can ensure that every application that we buy, we build, integrate, is explicitly mapped to a core business capability. And we see that more in depth in the TOGAF business architecture class. This design process transforms the abstract long-term goals into concrete, scalable operational realities, ensuring that our technology landscape scales seamlessly alongside our business. So, to successfully transition from where we are to our idealized future, baseline to target, we follow a rigorous 4-step journey. And we cover that in extenso during our TOGAF class over the 4 days, combined class, Foundation Practitioner. We begin with a baseline mapping to catalog our current systems and identify the active bottlenecks. We then draft the target blueprints that's representing our optimized future state. The value of the change for the customer sits right there. The third step is a gap analysis. This is where we compare these two models, baseline target, to pinpoint systemic overlaps and obsolete hardware and structural friction points. We quantify the change here, basically, in the gap analysis technique. Finally, we built our phase migration plan. Make it happen, basically, where we schedule initiatives, integrated initiatives across a portfolio of many different projects, very busy areas where we have to actually mingle in properly. And scheduling initiatives based on a balance of technical feasibility and immediate business value. And I'll keep repeating the word value because it's really the core essence of what architecture is meant to achieve, is provide value, extra value. We talk a lot about value. We try to define it in class because the value is in the eye of the stakeholder, as we say. This structured path, as you see here, ensures that our evolution is steady, measurable, and completely insulated from operational disruptions. Before I get to the second point, architecture as decision support, I want to introduce you to a little bit of a case study background so it makes it more real, right? So I want to define what M&A means in this presentation. When people talk about M&A architecture scenarios, as you will hear, they're referring to specific to strategies, blueprints, game plans that an enterprise architect creates to handle the complex technology and business challenges that arise during a merger or acquisition, M&A, merger acquisition. Because no two mergers are identical. So architects typically design for a few standard scenarios based on what the business wants to achieve. There's the first scenario called the absorption scenario. The absorption scenario is also called a plush and assimilate. The buying company here completely absorbs the acquired company. The goal of this merger and acquisition is to move the acquired company off all their old systems and onto the buyer's existing IT platforms as quickly as possible. Where the architecture fits here is like the architecture task is meant to map out the data migration path. For example, moving customers' accounts from the old, say, CRM into yours, and decommission their legacy software, hardware, systems in general to save on licensing costs, for instance. And I've done that in the past. Now, the second scenario would be the best of breed scenario, the modern upgrades, we call it as well. Instead of one company dominating, the architects evaluates the systems of both companies to see who does what better. The goal here is to build a superior, combined IT landscape using the finest pieces from each organization. The architecture task is here to, if the acquired company actually has a much better digital checkout system, for instance, or supply chain tool, then the architect designs a blueprint to integrate that superior system into the parent company's core frameworks. And there's a third scenario, the coexistence scenario, to keep them separate. The acquired company is left to operate largely independently. Often that's because they serve a completely different market, or the different legislation constraint, or they have a unique brand identity, for example. Now, the goal of this scenario is minimal disruption to daily operations, work in the background kind of thing. But we still have shared corporate oversight though. So from an architecture point of view, the architecture team will have to focus heavily on the framework pillar here, which is setting up secure data pipelines, identify access management, so the parent company can pull financial reports and aggregate data without messing with the subsidiaries' day-to-day tech stack, as we say. The last one is the consolidation scenario, the start fresh. In here, both companies are running outdated legacy systems, and the merger is used as the perfect excuse to modernize. So the goal here it's move both entities simultaneously into a brand new one with a cloud native third platform, things like that. It's often the case. The architecture task is to design a massive, completely new future state blueprint. Sometimes we talk about greenfield implementation here. We build that from scratch while managing the immense risk of migrating two distinct business operations at the same time. So when an executive asks for M&A architecture scenarios, they are essentially asking, what are our structural options for gluing these two companies together? What will it cost? Which path to introduce, or will introduce the least amount of risk, and maybe also disruption? So I chose this case study because it comes into the discussion of my class fairly regularly. I thought it could be a good base for comparing basically the decision support that architecture provides. When we dissect a modern impact assessment, we focus on three core analytical pillars. First, we conduct a structural failure forecast to isolate the tightly coupled platforms, showing us exactly where things like APIs and data pipelines are likely to break under pressure. Second, we perform financial exposure mapping to uncover the hidden technical debt, overlapping vendor licenses and redundant systems, allowing us to build an accurate, realistic capital integration budget. And finally, we use M&A integration modeling to simulate operations frictional points. And this three-pronged approach acts as our diagnostic radar, helping us safeguard the business critical baseline processes while giving our integration teams a clear, risk mitigated blueprint for execution. On this one, we're discussing a crucial evolution in how we manage enterprise transition, the integration of enterprise architecture into a core risk management framework. Too often during high stakes corporate moves, whether they are mergers, acquisition, as we talked about before, or massive legacy system overhauls, leadership is totally blinded by technical complexity, leading to runaway cost and unexpected downtime. By introducing systematic, proactive impact assessments, we can transition architecture from a passive diagramming exercise into an active decision support tool. And this assessment maps out structural costs, which is on everybody's mind. Every time someone does architecture, they say, how much is it going to cost, how much is it going to cost? And we can't do that until we get to a certain phase. We call it phase E generally. We have generally assessed the flag or the flagging of critical system vulnerabilities. We expose integration risk before we commit capital or write a single line of code, for instance. That's what the architecture project is about, ensuring that our strategic maneuvers are both highly controlled and predictable. The coexistence model is our lowest risk option, keeping both legacy IT landscapes running independently with an API-driven overlay, while cost-effective upfront. It is cost-effective, but it does introduce identity and synchronization latency. The core consideration represents a balanced, moderate risk path where we merge foundational, let's take the example of enterprise resource, planning systems like ERPs and customer relationship management system like CRM. So ERP and CRM databases, those requiring deep schema alignment. And lastly, we have full cloud migration, which is our highest upfront risk and cost, where we deprecate the legacy environments entirely to rebuild a modern cloud native state here. While the migration carries higher initial exposure, that's a fact, it ultimately delivers the highest long-term operational agility and lowest ongoing maintenance overhead. So this matrix you see here allows us to align our risk tolerance directly with our financial objectives. And that's one of the core strengths of enterprise architecture. And I think that the execs watching this, this will resonate in their mind when they ask the question, why do I need enterprise architecture? Thirdly here, let's talk about architecture as framework. And that's where TOGAF took its whole importance, As our organization scales, we have autonomous business units that naturally move fast to solve their immediate challenges, sometimes at the risk of drifting away from the big picture, the superior architecture, we call it. However, without the centralized guidelines, this independent execution inevitably, therefore, breeds accidental architecture, as I said, a tangled web of isolated, incompatible systems that quietly compile massive integration debt and deep data silos. Treating architecture as a framework, like TOGAF, directly addresses this vulnerability. We are not establishing a bureaucratic handbrake to stifle innovation. No, rather we are setting up the essential rules of the road. Much like lane markings and traffic signals on a highway, if you prefer. These guardrails are designed to help our engineering and business teams to move at maximum speed without colliding, ensuring that every localized technology decision naturally aligns with our overarching enterprise strategy. To prevent the fragmented, incompatible systems from taking root, our framework relies on three critical operational standards. First, we define a vetted, streamlined catalog of approved software, hardware, systems, platforms, and technologies, dramatically reducing operational sprawl. Secondly, we establish governed data foundations using shared data dictionaries so that the data sets created by one department are instantly readable and usable by another without complex custom translations. Okay. Finally, we mandate standardized integration contracts by requiring all new applications to adhere to strict predefined API rule sets and security formats. Security taking its whole place in architecture. Secure by design is what I also teach through the class, because it's so predominant in basically in every companies where we have this dissociation of security and projects. We'll look after it further down the track if need be. That's absolutely wrong. That's what actually causes so much discrepancy between the expectations and the result. Now, by adhering to these all new application, all new system to adhere to that strict predefined security formats and rule set, we achieve a highly modular plug and play environment where different business units can seamlessly share capabilities and scale together. So enforcing these guardrails requires us to shift our cultural approach to governance, moving away from the rigid late-stage gatekeeping and toward continuous alignment. The Architectural Review Board, sometimes we just nickname them ARB, acts as a collaborative steering partner rather than a hurdle. They work with you, not against you. They evaluate major procurements and design decisions early in the process when changes are still easy and cost-effective to make. By embedding automated compliance checkpoints directly into our standard project delivery lifecycle, we catch compatibility issues before they are built. This balanced approach provides our departments, business units throughout, the segmented architecture across the breadth of the enterprise, with the tactical freedom to build what they need to succeed, while securing the strategic peace of mind that we are protecting the structural integrity of the enterprise to the risk and the amount of risk appetite that execs have stated prior to us starting the architecture. Last but not least, as our organization grows and scales, a subtle but dangerous vulnerability creeps in, and our collective operational knowledge begins to fragment. We have crucial insights that get trapped in outdated spreadsheets, lost in buried email threads, or most commonly survive purely as they call trivial and tribal knowledge, locked in the minds of a few key individuals. And they go under the bus, they disappear, we lose all that. Treating architecture as a knowledge management repository directly solves this problem. This isn't about saving dusty PDFs in a shared folder. For God's sake, let's go a bit beyond that. It's about maintaining a living, breathing, interconnected model of our entire business, explicitly linking our daily business processes to the underlying technology and data supporting them. You've probably heard of CMDB. We start talking about continuum and repository at this stage, and why it's crucial that you have a proper structure, a version control, and access control that agrees with the way you want to do architecture. By establishing such a centralized repository, we secure complete operational transparency. We ensure that any decision maker can instantly access a reliable real-time map of our assets and for workflows in general to guide this architecture strategic next steps that we go through before we implement. It follows us throughout the entire process of TOGAF. This is where we store our requirements as well. And those requirements can change on a whim at any moment. And we need to also have part of our governance a way to handle such change requirements. To unlock the true power of this source of truth, we have to look beyond static lists and build a dynamic map of our entire enterprise ecosystem. This means that we need to maintain a live, automated catalog of every business capability, software application, data set, and infrastructure components we own. It's a big work. That's why we have our BAs to help us producing and keeping this complete and up to date. But more importantly, it means mapping the relationships between them. This allows us to visualize exactly how our systems interact, showing us, for instance, precisely which core business process depends on which specific database or which downstream applications are fed by our central data lake, etc. By democratizing this information through interactive self-serve portals, as we see in the top shelf tools, EA tools, rather than just gatekeeping it in technical diagrams, which offer very little value. We enable the project managers, which are also our stakeholders, the developers, and the executives to quickly access the exact blueprints they need to execute their work without friction. And that's at this stage we talk about deliverables and how much value architecture adds by being able to produce views that consist of the whatever the stakeholder wants in terms of responding to their concerns from their viewpoint, their perspective. Being able to do that, guys, in architecture will already put you on the top shelf yourself, because this is one of the biggest hurdles that I've seen in architecture, is architects who struggle producing those deliverables. Now, ultimately, establishing architecture as a core knowledge asset is one of the most effective ways to de-risk the entire business. It's also one of the faults of architecture, to de-risk your entire business. When you have a senior developer, system architect, or veteran business analyst who leave the company, and that happens every day, we shouldn't lose years of deep system intelligence along with them. The architectural model is here to permanently capture and secure that institutional memory. This shared foundation dramatically accelerates onboarding for new team members as well, and external consultants, as long as you don't over customize your terminology, process, content, of course. Dropping the ramp-up times from months sometimes, imagine you pay for that, to days only, because they no longer have to hunt across silos for answers. By keeping this repository up to date, complete and correct, we ensure that every future modernization initiative or process improvement is built on verified, factual baseline realities, completely eliminating the costly guesswork. The reuse value is here, guys, not by reusing blindly, but by reusing smartly. Hope this helped you a little bit more in your architecture endeavor. Thank you so much for being with us. If, as I say, you want to know more about my train of thoughts, my brain farts, as I like to say, by all means, please go on my website and check out the blogs. The blogs are really where I put it all together, and hopefully you guys can email me your point of view, because it's always welcome. Thank you so much. Back to you, my Jess.
Thanks, Axel. Great to have you. Yeah. Next steps, start your journey, register for a course. For watching this webinar, we want to say thank you. So we're offering you a 15% discount, and that includes 15% off TOGAF if you were interested in our June, July course dates. We hope to see you on the next one. Thank you so much.